Get it started. And I'm sorry I've got my back to you, at least initially. Let's see. So my name is, all right. So my name is Jay Carpenter, and I'm the founder of Desert Blockchain. And this is our monthly session on Wednesday, October the 25th. 2017 at 7 p.m. Arizona time. And tonight we're going to be talking about community innovation and blockchain. And we're at Grand Canyon University. I want to thank Grand Canyon for working with us to have this awesome space. And this is live streamed and recorded. So this is going to be about an hour and a half. Whoa. What happened? Oh.
Thank you.
Wow.
It was going so.
Or shorter.
Yeah.
You want to turn the projectors? Yeah. So traditionally at Desert Blockchain, we have these technical challenges that challenge our temperament, and we just had one where the projectors just went out. So
It's called breakdown.
that's right, it's called breakdown. So in any case, this is going to be about an hour and a half conversation. It's kind of informal. We do have a presentation, and we're going to be talking about an alternative approach to community and a way for us to get together and collaborate. So if you're interested in this might be kind of long to watch at one time. You can just kind of skip around, and we will have a presentation that will be available as well. So how are we doing, Jason? So I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Jay Carpenter, and my interest in the blockchain, I've been immersed in the blockchain for about 3 years now. And when I mean immersed, I mean it's almost the only thing I think about 24 hours, whenever I'm awake. When Ethereum was introduced, all of a sudden I realized that this is more than just cryptocurrency. And cryptocurrency is a big, big deal. But the applications for this decentralized trust structure, I think are incredibly profound. But my main interest is in name, addressing, and numbering, and identity. I come from a telecom background, and there's a big, big missing in telecommunications in terms of identity and a whole new realm of naming, addressing, and numbering. So what we're going to do, thank you, Jason.
I think that was just still with that.
Okay. So who is here for the first time? Wow. That's awesome. Who would like to introduce themselves and say what you would like to get out of tonight? Anybody? Did I just call on some folks? You, sir.
I'm Dallas Bedingfield with Evolution Computing, and we have a fundamental toolkit that has lent itself to the blockchain community. So we've gotten a couple of interested blockchain companies coming after us, and I'm curious about not only the different realms that it can be applied, but what your technical hurdles are right now in moving away from just cryptocurrency to actually applying it to other fields.
Awesome. And is there anything in particular you would like to get out of tonight?
Just a broader understanding of current blockchain problems, where it's being consumed.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for being the first one to introduce yourself.
Thanks for calling on me.
Yeah. Dennis, do you mind introducing yourself? Because I think you're working on some really
Sure. My name is Dennis Bonilla. I'm the CTO for Variable Labs. We're based out of Berkeley, California, Tempe.
Excuse me, somebody with a silver Lexus SUV 778C
DCT is the license plate number. Got your lights on in the parking lot.
Anybody have any Lexus?
There we go.
Cool. So I'm sorry.
Oh, we got two Lexus numbers.
So as I was saying, my name is Dennis Bonilla. I'm the CTO for Variable Labs. We are a company working on developing platform tools for VR. We've been able to work with Fortune 500 companies for the past 2.5 years now, successfully creating tools and platforms around content creation. We are now in the process of instituting some data capture in those tools. And so there's an opportunity there for blockchain for us to be able to kind of proliferate some of the data that we are capturing to potential partners.
Cool. And we're going to be talking about the possibility of weaving virtual reality and augmented reality into this community infrastructure as kind of a key part of it, as part of the dynamic nature of it. So thank you for coming tonight. Now, you are also in a collaborative workspace in Tempe, is that correct?
I'm actually we're a distributed team, so we've got folks working all over the country, working from a home office at the moment in Tempe. Our main office is in Oakland, but I commonly go and find other companies to collaborate with, Evolution, for instance, like it together tonight. Yeah, no, we're interested in different ways of using blockchain, and we're still kind of looking out for what the potential pitfalls are. For us, just as described, our issue is a little bit latency is a huge no-no in VR. So, and I know that the turnaround time for some of the requests can be several seconds, whereas we're looking at almost nanoseconds on some of the stuff that we have to accomplish. So.
Cool. Awesome. Okay, anybody else like to introduce yourself or say what you'd like to get out of tonight? Yes, sir.
Dan Kunra. I'm working on launching ICO at mid-January with February. And the ICO is called GrabJam. It's a software development platform, decentralized data center. And it's definitely coming along. It definitely has ways to go, but getting there.
And you're local to Phoenix, correct?
Yeah, in Gilbert, actually.
So I'm part of Phoenix Startup Week, which will be in February. And there's actually going to be a dedicated mini conference during that week on the Thursday, which I don't have the date at the top of my head. But it's going to be blockchain, and we're hoping to focus on some of the local companies like Dash, like Nexus, like your startup, and so forth. So if you know of local startups and SweetBridge, if you know of local startups that are blockchain projects or blockchain involved projects, please let me know. So, cool, welcome. So, any other comments or upcoming events that anyone would like to talk about? One of the things that I'm involved with that you might be interested in is called Fishing for Talent. And that's going to be Thursday, November the 9th at the Culinary Dropout. And we're going to be talking about the combination of cybersecurity and blockchain. And it's designed for students and entrepreneurs and companies that are looking to find and connect with students. Yes.
I'm a second year law student at ASU, and I'm actually one of the founding fellows of ASU's Blockchain Law and Policy Interest Group, and we had our first meeting a couple weeks ago. My second meeting is going to be next week, and I'm one of the only students in it right now, but like the professor is the faculty fellow for the Center for Law Science and Innovation, Professor Gary Marchand. He's the one who thought of the idea to bring together, and so we're it's very nascent, it's very new, but it's exciting, and like we set up a meeting, did a legal deep dive, a few of us and a couple of attorneys from Snell and Wilmer and a couple other law firms where we met actually with Caroline Lynch from who works with Sweetfoot and a couple other attorneys like Scott Henderson, and it was really interesting. So we're actually planning on doing a 4-part speaker series in the spring. That's going to be like an introduction to blockchain, and then we're going to get into some of the legal issues. So we're trying to get ASU Law on board, and so hopefully maybe next fall is the plan that we'll have our first blockchain and the law actual class being taught. So
awesome. Thank you so much for coming tonight and announcing that. Would you please post that on the meetup page? We know whatever upcoming activities there are, because we're definitely interested in tracking what's happening here in Phoenix around blockchain, especially in the legal realm. A few of us are actually going to Santa Monica on November the 10th for ICO 2.0 Summit, which will be a one-day conference with 1 or 2 attorneys involved. And this whole realm of ICOs and how this all fits into the legacy and incumbent regulatory realm is a key item for us to be looking at. So, Mark.
Good evening, Mark Goldstein, International Research Center. I run a research and consulting practice in technology for a quarter of a century after an engineering career. As the government evolution, community's working on the technical barriers. I'm working more on the regulatory barriers. So I'm very active with the Arizona Technology Council. I've been talking blockchain and virtual currency with them for a few years. No one kind of got it the first couple of years, but so very interesting things happening right now. I think I introduced some of the blockchain state positions here maybe a month or 2 ago, but we do have the Attorney General's office promoting a blockchain, a regulatory sandbox that would allow fintech startups to avoid banking regulation for a period of time. And Paul Watkins presented last month, but also very interested in seeing Arizona relax the money transmission licensure, MTL, that generally applies to all currency transactions, virtual or non-virtual. About 8 states have moved on that, and working again with probably Representative Wenger in the Arizona legislature on introducing not only the regulatory sandbox approach, but a more general relaxation of money transmission licensure that would allow non-bank entities to have much lower barriers of bonding and legal work to operate. I have been mapping the Arizona blockchain and fintech ecosystem, now up to like 13 or 14 pages. We put a version up, but we didn't publicly announce it, right? In the Google Docs. I'm going to send Jay a really current version, and we'll publicly post the link. And then I'm very interested in anything that's not on those 13 or 14 pages. We've done a lot of work to try to ferret things out, but of course, some things are submarine or under the surface. They haven't yet appeared. I think you might find that useful, and I'm very interested in getting corrections and additions to that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, Mark's doing some great work in the regulatory and policymaking realm. So.
Can I ask you to go back to November 9th, because you didn't, I don't think you quite finished. You were saying students and then companies working in blockchain?
Well, working in cryptocurrency is called Fishing for Talent. And it's under a meetup called We Protect. Okay. And I think it starts at 6 p.m. at the Culinary Dropout and goes to 9 p.m. And the last half hour will be a debate, of which I'm one of the 4 people in the debate, talking about should blockchain be part of cybersecurity. I'm on the pro side. The Chief Information Security Officer of McKesson, who's the sponsor of the event, is going to be the other pro blockchain proponent. And then there are going to be two misguided individuals that are con. And actually one is not quite so con. He's the Chief Information Security Officer for WebPT, and I think there was a mix-up, and he's actually pro blockchain, so it should be an easy debate.
So the deck is stacked.
What's that?
The deck is stacked.
The deck is stacked. And then we have one lonely soul, Elio Uriaco, who is dead set against blockchain all the way around. So we are going to pummel. Yeah, we have a prediction market.
The anti-people who are against it, best guidance on how to move forward.
True.
I always find mining opposition to be where I get the greatest ideas.
Absolutely. And since there are a lot of new people, thank you for those comments. Since there are a lot of people that are new here tonight, if you don't know, the newest location for the Arizona Cyber Warfare Range is just across the hall. So if you're not familiar with the Arizona Cyber Warfare Range, it's an opportunity to come in and learn about hacking, about ethical hacking, about defending against attacks and so forth. So anyway, it's a great resource, and they had the grand opening on October 7th. And DJ, I'd like to introduce you as well. So DJ Mills, go ahead.
I'm DJ. I actually am a classmate of Eric over there in the ASU law program. I worked for a while with Congressman David Schweikert, who some of you may know is the co-chair of the Congressional Blockchain Caucus. He actually recently put out some legislation as of 2 months ago to have like a $500 kind of barrier for capital gains taxes. That way, currency transactions wouldn't get taxed so frequently. I'm also doing some research for an attorney up in Phoenix regarding like digital signatures and blockchain in terms of wills and trusts. So, yeah.
Cool.
You said you worked?
Yeah.
Or it's past tense?
It is past tense. Email hasn't bounced back to you yet?
No.
But I pushed an email to you and
You did.
I said, what happened?
So
I was gonna do a big search.
So part of our opportunity set here in Arizona is to look at how we can leverage this, what I would call visionary policymaker group that we have in Arizona, like Congressman Schweikert, like Attorney General Mark Brnovich. And I think there are some other people that are starting to wake up to the opportunity of blockchain. But tonight's session is about exploring some alternative ways for us to come together and collaborate. One of the things we've been talking about for some time, and we just kind of been mentioning it at almost every meeting, is what would it be like if we had a place where we could come together on a regular basis, sort of like the Arizona Cyber Warfare Range across the hall, where you can come in, you can meet other people. There are phenomenal serendipitous value propositions to coming to a place like this, where all of a sudden you run into somebody and in 30 seconds, they might have the answer that you need, or you might have the answer that they need. And it can't be duplicated online. It can't be duplicated virtually, in my view. And I have been involved with collaborative workspaces for about 6-7 years now. I spent a lot of time at a place called Gangplank Chandler for about 2 years. And what came out of that community was phenomenal. In my view, they had the highest success rate of any startup incubator space that I'm aware of. You don't hear about it much, but on like a per square foot basis, there were some incredible success stories that came out of there. So what we're going to talk about tonight and I'll go into the presentation, is a different way to create infrastructure around a collaborative workspace or collaborative space. So, unless anybody has any other questions or whatever, I'm going to go into the presentation, and we'll just kind of step through it. And then Inga, who's a new member of Desert Blockchain, she's going to talk about her vision for a revolutionary space or city or infrastructure city in Arizona. So, yes.
Just a brief comment on Gangplank. From what I've noticed, I moved here from DC 3 years ago. I think that part of Gangplank's success comes from a really strong community management culture. So I'm interested in seeing how your slides speak possibly to that, because such a big part of being able to get things going and keeping it hot is just having people responsible for community management.
Right. And I don't know, have you been out to Gangplank
Several times.
lately?
Well, not lately, not lately.
Yeah. So,
I actually just left there, actually didn't come here.
oh, really?
I
Okay.
just, seriously, I shut it down, so almost. Yeah, just
Okay.
left it.
So I think there's some lessons to be learned from Gangplank, and I think there are other spaces to look at, like Heatsink Labs, and we can kind of talk about that. But thank you for mentioning that. And by the way, Gangplank, like a few years ago, was kind of a globally followed experiment in collaboration, in community, and so forth. So. So let me screen share here. Let's see if this works. Sorry, I didn't have this set up a little better to begin with. I'm giving away all the good stuff. So sorry. So I've called this community nodes. And cool. It's sort of like you got the dessert before the meal. So what do I mean by community nodes? I mean, what if there was a structure that was kind of dynamic that was more along the lines of this decentralized construct? And that's what this is allowing us to look at tonight. This is not set in stone. This is just an idea. This is just something to get everybody thinking. So I had the opportunity to, let's see, to actually go back to my childhood and play with Tinker Toys and Legos. And this is kind of a very rough model.
They had Legos when you were a child?
They did have Legos. I could claim I invented Legos. I probably wouldn't be here if I hadn't invented Legos. So this is kind of a rough model of a prototype that is designed to highlight the dynamic nature of what we're talking about here. This is designed to follow the, like I said, the constructs of the blockchain, this decentralized web. It's designed to move from place to place. And it's also designed so that you could have multiple of these that are like connected together. Not only in the same proximity, but also around, basically around the globe. And it's designed so that the individual participants can basically have their own space, like we'll call it a trailer or module or whatever, that they actually could own and could be customized and made in a personalized way, modified. And the important part is this is designed so that it can fork. So if there is some sort of disagreement among the community, it's sort of like a cell that can divide. And you could just basically, the next time things, whatever, you could take your unit and go to a different community. And what that opens up is a way for people to participate in a community and sort of build equity in a community, but not be stuck to a physical location. Because when you're working in some sort of physical location, like conventional collaborative workspaces, if all of a sudden you have to leave, then that's a pretty big cost to do that. Because like you've built some equity, you've participated in the community and so forth, and now all of a sudden all that goes out the window. So those are a couple of the dynamics of it. Let me see if I can advance the slides. Okay, and I'll make this presentation available, open it up to everybody so you can take a look at it. This is just definitions of community nodes, infrastructure, and so forth. But these are some of the elements and some of the benefits. It's decentralized, it's scalable, it's modular, ownership-centric, which I talked about, connected in that it's designed to be a networked infrastructure. It's designed to be flexible. It's designed to be media-centric. What do I mean by that? Well, this outer structure, which is actually, instead of Tinker Toys, is supposed to be like trusses that you would find at a concert or festival venue. That structure is designed to accommodate rich media, being video like this, and audio and sensors, and all the things that we've been talking about playing with, but are kind of difficult to play with in a set building like this. You don't see, other than these, motorized screens, a lot of what we consider to be the Internet of Things. And why not? Because you gotta run wire through a wall or whatever, for the most part, in order to install that stuff. So this is designed to be as flexible as possible so that we can really start to play with the Internet of Things and in conjunction with blockchain. Fork friendly, as I said, is composable, network, universal, personalizable, which is actually the word. And it can also be self-sufficient because camping trailers can actually be powered by solar. You can put generators on them, so you eliminate the possibility of losing electricity and so forth, or at least you have that as a backup. And that might also come into play in terms of some of these, disaster situations where you can throw up a community node in the middle of one of these disaster situations. Let's see. Go on to the next slide. The idea is to make this out of off-the-shelf components so that everything is readily available. Nothing has to be made to order. It's stackable. So I think that as this progresses, you could see these nodes stacked on top of one another. It's virtual reality friendly. So this is conducive to setting up, your VR pretty much anywhere within this flexible arrangement. It's augmented reality friendly, AI friendly, drone friendly, robotic friendly, gaming friendly. Incorporate gaming into this, and you could have these different nodes be dedicated to different purposes. So like this one could be IoT, another one could be cybersecurity, maybe you've got some sort of family node over here, and you could start to mix and match these things based upon whatever the context is. Maybe communication, WebRTC, whatever. Cryptocurrency friendly. So these nodes could start to create their own cryptocurrencies. Sort of like, when you go to the fair or whatever, sometimes you'll buy these tickets and you'll trade tickets for, your meals, your games or whatever. Well, why not expand that into start to experiment with that. Identity is key to these, because I think that we could start to play with identity where, what if, in virtual or augmented reality, what if within these constructs or a meeting like this, we could kind of look at somebody and all of a sudden see their LinkedIn profile. And that has implications in many dimensions, not only for getting to know one another, but also in terms of security. So reputation, mobile mining, I think this is conducive to, taking one of these trailers, these mobile units, setting up mining rigs in here, and maybe you can move it from place to place and hook into power that's based upon the price of that power. It's also mobile data services friendly, because the massive amounts of data now are requiring that you actually have to pull up a truck and tap into the network itself and download all this data, store it on these drives and whatever, and then move it, because it would just take too long to transfer it from point A to point B. Let's see. Any questions or comments at this point?
Well, it was fork friendly on the previous.
So fork friendly, we have transitioned from a proprietary centric construct into more of an open source construct. And as we're seeing with the Bitcoin blockchain, with the Ethereum blockchain, within communities, we are seeing forks happen where the community or part of the community decides, well, we think it should be a different way than the way it's been before. And they will fork the chain. Well, this is designed so that forking the community can happen as well. And if you are thinking about an open source paradigm versus a proprietary paradigm, that becomes very important. Because when the community forks, both sides are pretty much whole in terms of whatever work they put into in terms of code. Okay? You're not locked out of the code because of a proprietary covenants around using the code. That makes sense. Does that make sense on forks?
Okay. One of the things that occurred to me in what you're saying is that, like the idea of calling it a community, real communities do this. As they get to a certain size, from sub-communities. You have Glendale and Tempe and whatever, and because of what I'm imagining from what you're saying, they can still communicate. What you can do is keep communities somewhat manageable in size, maybe perhaps allow them to interoperate also.
Right.
And that is a really big growth.
Yes, that's a great point. There's an emergent model here that's dynamic over time. So the community is always sort of self-assessing, making a self-assessment. Are we the right size? Are we accomplishing what we want to do? And if all of a sudden something new is needed, it's easy to sort of divide like a cell. Yes.
You're reminding me of, there's a bar camp called Space Up, which is kind of a decentralized way of running a conference. Typically they run, they're not supposed to run any length of time, any prescribed length of time. They typically run around 2 days. There's no agenda when they begin. And so the most important thing is actually pulling in people, 100 or so people. You have basically two days worth of content, and you have a board, which I can imagine being your different locations, which means you would have to seed some of these locations already. And then the SMEs, the subject matter experts, then pick where on the schedule they're comfortable presenting. And what we were told as this kind of thing was growing in the different aerospace communities was, if you walk into a room, or in this case, a location where there's no one there and it's dead, let it die.
Absolutely.
The only problem that you run into things like that, is that if something were flourishing or needed some support to flourish, you might lose that asset, or you might lose that institutional knowledge by letting it die. So just things to think about.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a great example.
Thing that occurs to me, listening to what you just had to say, unlike the traditional model with open source where you can fork, it's very, very difficult to join back.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm picturing what you're saying, I don't know the details, but it might be that what you've got is a situation, since you've got this mobility of community, that you would also facilitate joins where separate communities can join in without losing assets. And that's kind of a nice thing that I don't see earlier models achieving.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, you could easily envision that the communities come back together, or different parts come together. Yeah, go ahead.
My question deals with, I understand that it's dynamic, that you're trying to get the whole concept of being dynamic on the fly, and being able to also at the same time have compartmentalization of modularity in that sense. But is that also, my concern probably deals more with identity. Sometimes things may need to be autonomous to that particular unit that are not indicative of other parts, because that diversity may make the mosaic stronger as a whole. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm asking that question. Is it completely going to be where everybody's pretty much rubber stamped, with exact same setup, exact same things, or are there really be an allowance or a variation in some respect, particularly indicative to that particular component within that?
I don't know. And part of what's available with this. My intuition is that it will be dynamic enough to accommodate, a group or subgroups of the community going off and making an autonomous setup that might not be connected to the rest of the community. That's my intuition, but part of what's available is an experimentation.
That's where your community managers come into play, where someone will choose. Ideally, you would have somebody that knows their community, that knows who their user groups are, that knows who's going to show up and maintain the garden or whatever it might be. And yeah, that the individualism actually provides kind of a stronger backbone over time. But you need somebody that's there to tend to the garden, to plant the seeds in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we're seeing that in the blockchain space, where we kind of have these leaders like Satoshi Nakamoto, like Vitalik Buterin, like Juan Benet of IPFS and Protocol Labs, where somebody kind of gets the thing started, but there's enough flexibility and dynamic nature to this that they can sort of individualize it. But it usually starts out with a leader, but then kind of takes on a life of its own. Go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, my name's Tony. It's my first time. I spent this summer, I built and customized a van and traveled around Mexico.
Cool.
And this little picture's happening every night down there with all these people who built and customized their vans. And they pull together in a circle, and they may be together for 3 days or 3 weeks, and they start following each other around.
Yep.
And they have the same goals, and it just works out. They split and go different directions and set up somewhere else. And
So
it's happening organically now.
Yeah.
But not at the tech, they're building experiences of some sort. Right. They're all technologically hooked up and posting it.
Was it a valuable experience?
It was a great experience, and I'm smiling while you're doing this because I know it can work. I've seen it. One guy's van breaks down or needs a part, everybody comes together and fixes it.
Yeah. How do you know where they bought the other vans on?
There's kind of spots that, it was centered around the surfing culture. So at this surf spot, this beach, and it's free to camp on the beach, and there would be 4 or 5 vans, and they pull up, and you're kind of in this shared responsibility. And then they split. The loud people start their own little camp, and the quiet people start their little camp over here, and it's all very personalized. And the technology these people have going in their vans are all solar powered, composting toilets, and they pick up and move. And lo and behold, you just keep running into the same people. The camp keeps up and down the coast, and this is the East Cape down by Cabo. It just keeps popping up and moving and morphing with different people because they're all on their way in different directions. It's happening.
Yeah.
Organically.
And so I think this is an emergent phenomenon.
And
This
Burning Man certainly has elements of that, but
Yep.
more on a calendar time basis. But
Yep. And Burning Man has this sort of barter economy, which could be supplemented with some sort of cryptocurrency economy. And what you're talking about, Dennis, there's also another conference that I've been to, which is called the Internet Identity Workshop, which is an unconference format. And it's dynamic, it's emergent, it's real time, and people spend their time and their attention based upon what is most interesting.
Is there, I don't know, this is extrapolating from where you're going, is there a map or any indication that power runs cheaper in any particular quadrant in the city? Like,
Well, when I can get to my neighbor's outlet, it's
Yeah.
just kidding.
I just wondered, right, if there are resources, right, where.
I don't know. Although Jason and I have had some, mining camps. Jason's the mining expert, and you're shaking your head. Yes, there are.
Yeah. So I study geographic information systems and sciences, and there are some resources that do show the availability of, or the variation of energy resources and energy power across at least the continental United States.
Black fiber, part of what Google's strategy was about 10 years ago was buying up a ton of black fiber, which is unused capacity, and then putting in modular data centers. So like putting in a container, like full of some computers to scrape through its database on that dark fiber where it's essentially cheap or free, nearly free. And I wonder if there's not necessarily dark fiber, but high bandwidth scenarios around the city that we're not using.
Could be. I mean, I'm gonna advance the slide one more time. So this is some other dimensions, the governance experiment. So within these different community nodes, we could start to experiment with different governance mechanisms, different purposes and so forth. What you're talking about, Dennis, is the Carusa optical networking experimentation. That is a open source, laser-based optical link that's about, I think, 100 meters long and can transmit 10 gig a second, I think it is, and it's about $2,000, and you can actually 3D print the parts to it. And it comes out of an academic experiment and innovation from Europe. I think it's one of the most exciting networking pieces that I've seen. And that optical networking could start to link these nodes in pretty much whatever configuration you want. And also tie into the dark fiber that you're talking about, possibly. Mobile training, so in other words, let's say that one of the large companies in Phoenix or wherever was interested in like a week or 2 weeks worth of training. One of these nodes could be set up at their facility and people could come and go and different workshops and experiments could happen. Mobile entertainment, part of this, as we're going to see in a few minutes, is designed to be almost like a festival type atmosphere where you can have video, audio, all sorts of dynamic media that happens within the space, as well as coding workshops and so forth. So that's the diagram. The hexagonal shape is selected because, in my view, teams of 6 people is about as far as you want to go. Anything less than 3 isn't really a team in my view, and 7, 8, 9 gets to be kind of unworkable. So that's why the 6-sided figure is selected. It could be different, and there's nothing set in stone about that. This just indicates how the nodes can be arranged in different configurations. Oops. Back. So if you can imagine, oops, instead of the Tinker Toys, imagine a truss system like this that constitutes this sort of overlay that's sort of like the skeleton of the node. Okay. And I've actually priced this out, and I'll talk about a company here in town that does this sort of staging setup for a 6-sided figure about the size with like 25 to 30 foot sides. It'd be about $1,500 for a week. So to read that. Obviously, you can start to create this rich media experience with all sorts of lighting, just as you would at any kind of stage or festival. This is an example of a travel trailer. Since I picked this travel trailer, I actually think that the pop-up version is superior. But you can see, you've got plenty of space to have meetings and, sleep in, whatever. What was going to happen?
Just open a new tab. Just go back to the other tab. Oh, you have like a clickable image is what you're doing.
Okay. Sorry.
Maybe.
So that's the interior. All this could be ripped out and customized, and again, it could be a platform or format for IoT, for adding screens and projection and all that sort of thing. And then basically this is just an idea of what it would look like with the hexagon fully filled out, and then
Wait, there's people on it.
there are people there. Okay, so, and this is just to give you an idea how people could basically own the particular units, and then, come and go, leave, whatever. And obviously, there's enough space for additional people beyond the owner of the unit. I apologize. Okay, so this gets into one of the dilemmas that I think we have in the Phoenix area, is sort of this competition among the municipalities. That if I've got galvanized in Phoenix, then somehow I've got a leg up on Scottsdale or Tempe or blah, blah, blah. Well, this particular arrangement might allow these nodes to become sort of owned by the entire metropolitan area. Okay. And because they're modular, because they can be sort of cookie cuttered out, there's sort of a homogeneous quality to them that could be shared by the various municipalities.
It also helps solve the, we've talked about many times, if we have a building in a location, you're not convenient to everybody.
Right.
You might be, because we're so big.
Right.
So this helps solve that.
And I'm sorry that I didn't have this set up better. So this highlights the municipal collaboration. The other thing that we're facing is the academic institutions kind of compete with one another. You know, ASU's trying to outdo all the other academic institutions in town. GCU's competing with ASU and so forth. Well, this opens up a way for each one of them to have a node or multiple nodes on their campuses, and for students to come and collaborate at the nodes. It's youth friendly because you could have these at schools. It's also rural program friendly. So I don't know how many of you have been to the Desert Blockchain site, but you might have noticed that there's the Decentralized Web Games, which is a totally separate site. Well, I was experimenting a year ago with pretty much a ghost town, mining town in the center of Arizona called Hayden, Arizona. And this node arrangement would actually be possible to set these up in various rural towns and do experiments. The Decentralized Web Games was designed to foster the innovation. I mean, the innovation that's in this room, if we really had a canvas where we could play, we could create some really cool stuff. And I think we could do some things in a rapid fashion that might be deployable in a variety of scenarios, like what we experienced in Las Vegas. If we had really had something dynamic, where drones could have been deployed once there was an indication of an attack. You know, I could imagine drones, a swarm of drones converging on the point of the attacker and being able to, if nothing else, distract what happened in Las Vegas. But having a blank canvas, like a deserted street in a mining town, where we could actually simulate a truck driving at 70 miles an hour into a crowd, that would be a valuable thing to play with. And I think the dynamic nature of this community, the talented nature of this community, might come up with some innovations and some constructs that might be pretty readily deployable in some of these situations. Yes?
Keep in mind, as the VR dude in the room, you don't actually need the actual truck, right? Like, you could get a pretty high fidelity simulation depending on what your ancient structure was and how that was programmed out. But like, be part of VR and those technologies that are being able, it's just being able to visualize some of that data. So you could actually, you may be thinking that you have a problem you don't have.
Perfect. And that's what this is designed to do. So you could, you know, stage a virtual reality simulation in the middle of this thing, have other people collaborating and commenting on how might this go, if I'm following what you're basically suggesting.
Yeah, I just think like you don't even have to be, I think co-location is perfect for that. I mean, I've had meetings in VR at this point now, where someone's a completely distributed meeting where all 5 members have avatars and they're joining into a communal private room where encryption is vital business.
Yeah.
The space is massive.
Well, Jason's been involved in something called Decision Theater at ASU. And you want to talk about Decision Theater a little bit?
Well, Decision Theater was a place at, or is a place at Arizona State University for people to start visualizing different types of policy implementations, where there's a physical space where you can start playing around with, you have 7 screens around you that are shooting 3D video at you from 270 degrees around you. And it gives you a way to start visualizing different types of scenarios for policy implementations and regulatory frameworks and other academic problems, where you can see on these screens in an immersive environment and actually kind of feel like you're implementing the policies without actually having done that.
Let's see if I can advance these slides. Okay, so part of what this idea is inspired by are existing events. So there's something, this is the Chaos Communications Camp from Europe. I think it's in Germany. And this is 2015. And you can kind of get a sense of the feel of this dynamic community. And they basically hold workshops. They're looking at all kinds of things from satellite hacking to cybersecurity to robotics. All of these things create this rich collaborative space where people can start to share ideas, connect with one another, and explore different things that would be difficult to do in a virtual sense. And that's a picture of one of their workshops at the Chaos Communications Camp. Now, that's an overview. They have about 4,000 people that spend about a week together collaborating and so forth.
That's not permanent?
That's not permanent.
Not permanent.
It's basically like kind of a festival where I think this is actually a farm, a working farm, and they come together, they build this community, and then they take it down. Does that make sense? This is an event called Born Hack, and this just happened in August, I believe in Denmark. And this is one of their workshops. This is close to the sea in Denmark, I believe, in a town called Born. And they come together for a week and explore all sorts of different innovations and technology. They actually have villages. So if you go to this link, you can see the different types of villages that they put together to explore different realms of innovation and technology. And for that matter, it doesn't have to be technology. It could be other things, like yoga or whatever. This is their schedule and program. Can't really read it here, but suffice it to say that it's an opportunity to investigate various topics that you might be interested in. Somewhat akin to your unconference that you're talking. It's a little more structured, I believe. This is something called the Electric Forest, and I was going to play it. I'm not going to play it because I realized that there's all sorts of copyright issues and stuff like that with the music behind it. But you should check it out. It's really cool. It's a festival that happens in Michigan, and they basically build this entire festival structure and then take it down. This is something that just happened, like October 12th and 15th in Joshua Tree, California. This is called Desert Days Camping. You can watch that video as well, and it gives you a sense of what's possible in this sort of dynamic coming together festival atmosphere. This is something you should really check out. It's about 3 minutes, but this is called Circus Farm, and this is actually out in Mesa. And a lot of the developer community here locally is starting to frequent this. But basically, you can go there, and people are dancing with fire. They have workshops where you can learn how to do circus performance and stuff like that. But all I'm trying to highlight with these particular events is sort of the creative nature of what's possible in these more dynamic, flexible communities and infrastructures. This is just exploring some possible vendors. This is a company in Scottsdale that provides these stretch tents that I think creates some interesting opportunities. This is actually an event coordinator and provider called Clearwing that has a location here in Phoenix, and they take about, I don't know, 4 or 5 days to set up this event, and then they take it all down. It's like a 2 or 3 day festival. That is in Wisconsin, I believe. I recommend you you gotta click through to see their website and so forth. And that's pretty much it. So this is kind of a work in progress. Where this stands right now is I've been looking at potential sites, including Grand Canyon University, to do sort of a prototype of these. I've been talking to shopping centers and other locations that might be able to accommodate this. I've been working on the costs to set this up, some of the financing methods and so forth. Basically, there's a zero budget for this right now. I'm looking at a way that this could be financially self-sustaining, actually possibly a money-making endeavor. So that's where it's at. In terms of the timing, I'm hoping to have something up, at least a prototype, by the end of the year. Assuming I can find a space to hold this. And that's where we're at.
You might check with Metro Center, because they just let the Challenger Space Center move in on a temporary basis till they get ready to move into their new home.
Mm-hmm.
So Metro Center seems to have space and might be willing.
Yep, that's awesome. And I actually talked to one of the people with the company that owns Metro Center, as well as some of the other malls. So I'd like to introduce Inga Beman, is that it?
Yeah.
Beman. And I discovered Inga, or Inga discovered me, when we were having this mining camp last Saturday, and she actually offered to teach the mining camp. I know it was a joke, but so I started clicking around your website, and I go, this is amazing. You are on the same wavelength. So, or it seems like that.
Okay.
So if you don't mind sharing with everybody what your vision is, I'm going to put up your website.
Hey, Jay, question?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so you're talking about having something up in regards to a node, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does it have to be Metro Phoenix?
Nope. It could be rural. What I discovered with the Hayden, Arizona experiment was a couple of key things. Number one, the internet was insufficient to do much of anything in this rural town. Number two is without more resources, which I didn't have at the time, it was difficult to get people to the site. I mean, we actually had a pretty impressive core group of people that came out to the site, and we were going to play with drones and stuff like that, but we didn't have the internet, and we had a very small group. So, but it was worth the experiment just to get out there and discover some of these things. Some of these things you don't know until you actually try to do it. What I found was it's hard to insure these things. The insurers, I was turned down for insurance as soon as one or two companies heard that it involved cryptocurrency. So that was kind of a surprise. And B, the insurance companies for event insurance don't like these camping arrangements. And, you know, you throw in fire dancing and you're talking Lloyd's of London, basically. I don't know. So I don't know. It doesn't necessarily have to be Metro Phoenix, but it seemed like that was a more convenient or a more viable way to get the thing started.
Do you have a thought in mind? Are you thinking of someplace?
Yeah, I think, well, yeah, and have you explored Prescott?
Prescott's a good candidate. And actually,
I'm actually in conversations with their economic development right now, some things they want to do, it might be worth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this could be, there's actually somebody that's a new Desert Blockchain member who has multiple businesses in some of the smaller towns. I mean, substantial businesses. So that's certainly an avenue. And with Embry-Riddle, it might be a natural. So let me show you.
And Whiskey Row.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, my dad actually owned one of the bars on Whiskey Row. So This is Inga. And where was this taken?
Well, somewhere on the internet.
Somewhere in the internet. Okay, so what attracted me was, you see that Alpha Centaurus, District 0713, City of the Future in the Arizona Desert, powered by Ethereum blockchain technology. That caught my attention. So, Inga,
Okay, I'll
tell me.
tell a little bit about it. I'm a software engineer. I work a lot on blockchain. So obviously it's Ethereum is my main thing. I'm new to Arizona. I never seen desert in my life. And I was going to Mexico a couple of weeks ago. And I fell in love with the desert just because to me, it's like a playground, a canvas to do pretty much anything you want, really. And I was thinking, you know, what if I build a house there, you know, just to live? Then if you have a house, you know, maybe have a couple. So I came up with this idea, and my friend, he's a game designer from Japan. And I asked him, could you come up with some, you know, really buildings for the city? You know, I want to build like, you know, Star Wars City, where the Annie can live with all the things. Let's do something like that. So he came up with a couple designs for me. I'll show you in a minute. It's going to load. There's a lot of images there. Wow. So one looks like the biosphere. Yeah, so we just brainstorming. We're basically just playing with different ideas what the buildings could be in the desert, right? They don't have to look like normal. Just play. So these are.
Might be a little bit of community outside of Taos.
So once on top of that, you can see those are the drawings that we worked on. The ones below are just like trying to find ideas online, you know, what we can do, what kind of things can be built. And you know, if you own the land, which is pretty cheap in a desert here, you can build whatever you want. I assume. I don't know. I'm not a builder, but I would build that.
Yeah, I think, Rick, what you're talking about, there's something called Meow Wolf in Santa Fe.
That's in Santa Fe.
That is this rich, artistic, collaborative event. I haven't been to it, but people have recommended it. And I think it's along these lines.
But outside of Taos, there's actually a community, and everything they use in the building of the structures is recyclable. And it's not conventional structures at all. And it reminds me of some of the
things there.
Yes.
But also just north of here is a town called Cordes Junction.
Yeah.
And you have Arco Sante, which is Paolo Soleri attempted 5,000 person community that never got that big, but it's all kind of shaped concrete and his vision was called an arcology, and it was meant to be a city with no automobile track. All the automobiles were outside the city, and the city was to be a 5,000 person contained community. It never got to that. It's more of
tried. Honestly, something like that requires insane amount of resources, insane amount of knowledge, engineering. Like you said, there's a lack of simple things like internet, right? How do you develop that? So this is obviously still in this huge fantasy kind of state where, you know, I'm not expecting to, I mean, this is not a business for me. It's a fantasy, right? It's something I'm gonna go for. I'm working on, you know, getting the money for it, just buying the land, putting first building in and just living there. Maybe I'm gonna hate it, who knows? But obviously from there, we have the citizens of the city, which is quite unique as well. Let me show you that.
I like it.
And those, I have a lot of those.
That's my pajamas, actually.
So this is actually, this is me, and I did even the tattoo that I'm gonna get if I'm getting that. I like to get creative.
It seems like it's science fiction, but I'll tell you that I supported NASA headquarters for about 12 years in DC, and a lot of this stuff is stuff that's actually being worked on, and
Yeah, I believe so.
and actually legitimately being produced.
Like what?
Just wearables, just flexible electronics.
The clothes, right, so,
The top one kind of reminded me of like Dune, a still suit that would collect water,
I
and
was just
recycle it or something.
Nike's working on a film, I'm off topic, but Nike's working on some micro-based fabric
yeah, I
that
saw
fixes
that.
itself, where it actually washes itself based on your own sweat. But they're doing it because they spend on about 500 gallons, to produce every shirt is about 500 gallons worth of water processing and dyeing.
Right, yeah, this is a hookup to the internet, I think, they have.
Chatting.
Yeah, to me, for example, just going every day to work or office or whatnot, wearing conventional clothing is so boring. Going to conventional buildings is boring. I don't like it. So I like to get creative. I want to wear something like that to work. Why not? I do sometimes. Yeah, people look at me strange now and then, but people.
That'll be a conversation starter, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I have a sword actually from my you. So, but this is kind of things I like to work on my free time.
Now, Inga, do you create some of these images using Photoshop and stuff like that?
No, I'm not an artist.
Okay.
So I did not actually create them, but I do go out and I collect them, or I ask people who can do those kind of things to send it to me. Send it, So this is, to me, is more like a, what do you call that? Like a thin board. Yeah, where you put your ideas that you can go back and reiterate or look, back and forth what kind of things could be done.
Sure.
Yes, you remember this movie, right?
Sure.
My favorite movie.
I think she taught my algebra class.
No, that was mine.
Oh.
Right, so that was from the times where they just were thinking about blockchain then. And then I evolved into Skynet, right? So we kind of
Which
getting
evolved
there.
into October.
Exactly.
There's a lot of cool things like that. So that's the project that you seem to stumble upon too.
I think it's awesome. What have you seen elsewhere in the world that's akin to this or anything like that? You said you just came back from Ireland, right? And what would you say is happening over there in Europe around blockchain, innovation, and so forth? Anything that's of particular interest?
So there's a lot of companies doing a lot of blockchain, a lot of startups. I was actually talking today to a very interesting company, insurance company. They already have the prototype out, the beta version, and I'm flying to Cancun next week, and I was trying to insure my flight. They had some technical issues there. The transaction didn't go through. But basically, you can go in, input your name, I think the flight number, pay with Ether, and get the insurance for your travel, let's say cancellation or whatnot. Something didn't work out for me at a particular time. They're still in beta, but I'm just glad to see that those things are happening. You can do a lot of things, and cryptocurrency is not a problem.
But that's actually cited fairly frequently as one of the actual working use cases for smart contracts as well as cryptocurrency, where you can actually buy this flight insurance using the blockchain and so forth.
So yeah, so I was really excited, you know, the implementation of the user experience and the cost was very nice. So I'm gonna meet them in Cancun next week and actually see all the presentation they're gonna do. As a software engineer, I'm really interested, you know, what kind of technology they used exactly, you know, what kind of issues they run into and things like that. So I'll get back next time, we'll share.
Are you going to Cancun for DevCon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
DevCon 3, for those of you that don't know, is the annual sort of the Ethereum conference in the world, and they hold it at different places in the world. And it'll be in Cancun next week, basically. So the core of the Ethereum community will pretty much be.
So another company I'm working with is called One Car Payment, and they are based in Pennsylvania. And what they're doing is they want to combine all the car payments. I don't know, I don't have a car, so I don't know exactly how it works. But they told me that there are car payments when you have to pay insurance, and you have to pay maintenance, and you have to pay a bunch of other things. And they want to combine all that into one package, even if you have 2 cars in the family and whatnot, and make it like into one payment. And I think they're going to be accepting other currencies as well to process that. Another company is also very interesting I'm working with, is called headsup7.com. It's a media sharing platform, like you mentioned. They do VR stuff. What they want to do is they have a platform where users can share the videos or the content that they have and allow other people to pay them or encourage them with cryptocurrency that they're going to release. So all those things are actually happening a lot. I'm supporting a lot of code within those companies, a lot of new things. So it's a lot of experimental things that are happening. Obviously, a lot of different good experiences to learn from. Yes.
Why don't we open it up for questions, unless you have anything else?
No.
Thank
Okay.
you. That's really, really awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what, I'm gonna stop the screen sharing.
Not that we can solve this tonight, but one issue that Inga brought up and you brought up when you were talking about Hayden, and I'm working on a project in Puerto Rico to try to get them up and running, is getting internet to areas that currently don't have internet. And Google was putting up their loons. That's one of their projects.
Right.
They put up 2 and it didn't work because they didn't anticipate how strong the winds were in the Caribbean. And so the 2 they put up blew back into the ocean fairly quickly. So that's a problem to figure out, because in areas of disasters, in areas where people might want to start cities in the desert, we've got to be able to have internet connection. You mentioned Prescott, and I'm unfamiliar with their internet connection, but I have someone working with me in Pine, and that's a pain. It's a pain point, is the internet works most of the time, or it's really, really slow, or yeah.
Well, in addition to the Loon project, there's also the Aquila project, which is a drone basically that flies at 60,000 feet. And this is a Facebook initiative. And it's designed so it can stay up via solar power for like 90 days. And we're fortunate because they're testing it down in Yuma. I don't know where it's at right now, But we actually had the opportunity with things like Aquila, with things like the Uber automated or autonomous cars, self-driving vehicles. I think we have some opportunity to really tie some interesting pieces together here.
Are you familiar with Worldview?
No, what's Worldview?
Worldview is a company that just finished their $12 million facility down in Tucson.
Mm.
And their lead pilot is an astronaut by the name of Ron Gary, and got a bunch of old NASA folks there, and people that were previously at NASA. And they fly gondolas up to about 100,000 feet, yeah. And they can name some of their clients, and they can't name some of the other clients. So you can imagine kind of things that they can carry out to that height. But that's similar to the loon type work, and that's down in Tucson.
Cool. Well, we've got an enormous pool of engineering talent, with companies like Raytheon and Northrop Grumman and General Dynamics, and I mean, some of those people are sitting in this room tonight. So, I think part of it is a way for all of us to connect and kind of collaborate and, sort of discover and share our experience and our expertise and so forth. So, any other questions or comments? What do you think of this?
Well, I think it's beautiful, because all I did is start with something, and then can
With
build
Tinker
from there.
Toys.
With Tinker Toys, exactly. Maybe we should make T-shirts that say that. But you anticipate this moving around, so I know you were, to start off, we want maybe a permanent thing just to see how it works. But how do you move the whole node infrastructure around? Are you anticipating to be able to be folded down and moved around?
No. I anticipate that, if you can imagine the truss system, what I would imagine is, let's say you want to move this from the Grand Canyon University campus over to ASU or Scottsdale Community College or whatever, you'd simply build another one and then drive your node, your units basically to the new one once it's set up.
Or break it down and put your struts on a flatbed bed truck.
Take it over.
Yeah, and part of the reason that I like the pop-up idea, which has a lower profile, is A, you can park it in a garage, but B, you could drive it up to the top of a parking structure and do this node structure on top of a parking structure, where you would have basically some isolation, cool location, and stuff like that. So that's one of the locations that I.
So Jay, I kept looking for the slide that would show the International Space Station, because it's essentially a strut system that, you dock your shuttles and other modules on. I mean, in some sense, it reminds me of that.
Interesting that you bring that up, because I think it's compatible with some of the things that are happening in space. It's my understanding that there's a hotel tycoon that's actually doing these inflatable rooms that are designed to be part of a space station or whatever.
Bigelow Aerospace.
What's that?
Bigelow Aerospace.
Bigelow Aerospace. Dan?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, there's a concept out there called hexayer by Nate Gupta.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so there's schematics on how to build these hexayers and to pop them up and tear them down, so it might be a good resource to look at.
Yeah, absolutely.
I believe Blue Frontiers, who Ross and Paul are working with, who Ross is now working, I think, with Sweetbridge, actually. But he has done in the past some work with a company called Blue Frontiers, which is a seasteading initiative. I believe they actually incorporate this hexagonal aspect to like seasteading.
Cool. So for those of you that are not familiar with seasteading, there's a body of people or a community of people that are looking at setting up new sovereignties out in the international sea or ocean space. That basically where you could start fresh, new constitution, new laws, new everything, and be outside the jurisdiction of all the other, let's say, incumbent geographic sovereignties. So that's it. Is that characterizing it correctly?
Yeah.
So.
Now, this may have different rules and regulations, but, you know, you mentioned Scottsdale Community College. You wonder about res land.
Reservation land?
Yeah, reservation
Well,
land.
that's a great point.
Because they're
is,
on res land.
You know, the Native American Indian reservations or whatever their territories have a different set of rules.
Yeah, they are sovereign nations.
They are sovereign nations. So that's another opportunity here in Phoenix and Arizona where there might be some space for policy innovation that wasn't really apparent or might be difficult to implement in the incumbent municipalities and so forth. Any other thoughts or ideas?
Just for that, ASU does have an Indian law program. So there might be some professors that might help us with information.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of budding policy talent at Arizona State University. And Gary Marshall, I think is another leader in that respect. So I think we're going to wrap it up with that. Thanks for indulging in this kind of flight of fantasy and kind of exploring. If you have other thoughts, let me know. I'm kind of passionate about this. Might be a complete failure, but I'm pretty much committed to giving it a go. I don't know how it's going to happen, but
Fortune favors the bold.
That's right. Well, I'm bold and not necessarily wise.
Awesome.
And for those of you that don't know, we kind of migrate over to Canyon 49, which is just south of here, which is open till 10 o'clock. And there's a nice bar area, and you can get something to eat if you want something to eat, and continue networking. I don't have a topic for next month. I made some invitations to some local cryptocurrency projects, but haven't heard back from them yet. But it's interesting how these topics just sort of emerge and come together, and we connect with people like Inga, who's thinking on the same wavelength. So
And are we the fourth Thursday or the last, fourth Wednesday or the last one?
it'll be November 29th.
Or November 29th?
Okay? So thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you, Jay.
Yeah.